Hey everybody, hopefully this is all working. It seems like live streaming still sometimes has some bugs, but it says I've been live now for 16 seconds. Woohoo! Okay, so I think we'll start by looking at what's new in the new point 1 version here. If you want to check this out, you can go into the release notes here in the help menu. Pulls open this right here. So new in Logic 10.3.1. This came out just this week, a couple days ago. And there's only really one new feature, and that's now that the audio unit version 3 spec is available for all the virtual MIDI ports. That means, for one, that some of the instruments which use this, if they get designed correctly, can have more than the 16 channels. So it's going to be great for big orchestral banks and all kinds of things. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the differences are, but this is going to only mean something to a handful of users. Other than that, looks like we just got a whole slew of stability and reliability things happening. So for instance, Logic Pro no longer sometimes quits unexpectedly. That's one of my favorite sentences. Because yeah, it was sometimes unexpectedly quitting. But here's a list of the things that no longer sometimes make it quit unexpectedly. And some visual updates, some performance updates. I was looking through this, and there weren't that many that I was really thinking were issues. I ran into a couple of these, but for the most part, it wasn't for everybody and on every system. There's always some quirks that come along with some of these bugs. But it certainly seems that they've been fixing a bunch of stuff. The magnet effect in Alchemy now reliably sounds in tune. Gosh, seems a little bit important. The scripter. So we're really making a big push, it looks like, into new version 3 for audio units. Cool. Automation. Some fades. Some flex. I actually did notice the quantizing audio Apple loops no longer sometimes causes them to change in length. That was really bizarre. Sometimes some of these bugs feel like it's just completely broken, but in this case it was, and hopefully that's going to be better. So some new takes and comping, some touch bar things. Let's see what's new with the touch bar. Pretty simple stuff. Track alternatives, a few there. Score, drummer, editing. Let's see the editing. This is a big one. So not all the time would things work when you're doing projects at higher than 44.1 kilohertz. I didn't run into this off the bat because all the projects I was sending to GarageBand for iOS were actually 44.1 kilohertz. Man, so you can see the list of things here. This is actually pretty cool that they're actively going through and fixing a bunch of things. I know 10.3 was a bigger update than we've had in a while, and so there's bound to be these type of fixes, but gosh, wouldn't it be nice if someday with some software we could get a version that actually worked pretty well without having a ton of bugs like this? I think it'd be really cool. But not holding my breath either. Okay, so none of those really are going to affect what I'm doing here. But I did want to talk just a little bit about how I felt about Logic 10.3, now 10.3.1, since it was released. Not too long ago, pretty recently actually, I did an interview with Dr. Noise, who's a musician here in Denver, and we were talking, and he did this whole thing. At the very end, I mean, he'd been using it a little bit that day and the day before, but it was interesting because I went to see what version he was on, and had auto updated to 10.3. And I mean, he was looking at it, using it, and my kind of what I felt like was that he didn't even really realize that a lot of it had changed. And I think that's the sign of a good update for me, is that even though we have a different interface to a certain extent, I'm not going through and completely lost with everything that's happening. Most of the things were intuitive, and I felt like most of the things were, I could recognize what they were and knew how to get there. Keyboard commands were essentially still the same. I just felt like it was a lot better thing in many ways. So that's good. I mean, that's how it should be in so many ways. That being said, every time there's a big update with a big graphic interface, I feel like there's a potential to spend time having to figure things out. And, I'm waiting for the software package someday for any software where they do a huge update, but it essentially looks exactly the same. And they've either just added or subtracted, but it's like, did we really need to have new buttons and new icons? Who knows? Sometimes I don't think that that's the most important thing that we got from it. Okay, cool. So let's see how we're doing over here on the stream. Looks like it's still happening. There's typically about like a 30 to 45 second delay when you do the streaming with certain software, and when you do it on my home network, which is just so. I'm excited someday for that all to get better. My neighborhood's relatively new, and so we don't have a lot of options for internet here. Kind of a bummer. Okay, so I wanted to do a little bit with Logic as well tonight, because I don't feel like any live stream is good without having actually used Logic a little bit. And so I'm going to perhaps talk just a little bit about one of my favorite plugins. And we'll go from there. We'll see if we get anybody out here watching and commenting and asking questions. We're going to crack this code. We're going to get people watching. I think we need to find a consistent time every week. But, sometimes we get the time that I have. You can hear probably my voice a little bit. I was a little bit sick. And I had some sick kids this week, so I didn't do any other videos so far. But you can hear my voice is just a little bit scratchy still. So let's talk about one of my favorite instruments for a few minutes. I did another video about this a long time ago, and ironically, it hasn't changed since then, even though it's been years. And that's sculpture. Now, sculpture is a pretty awesome instrument that you can use for some very specific things. And up until alchemy, it was probably one of the most CPU intensive instruments that we had. Partly when you actually did specific things with it. So, for instance, we could turn up a couple parameters that would really send it through the roof. Variation, the wave shaper in general, the body EQ, which we could actually attach this instrument to different measured instrument bodies. The whole concept behind this, though, is this string. So and what it does is model a string so that we can get different sounds. There's 3 different components here at the beginning. We have object 1, 2, and 3, and there's a little overlap between the 3. So for instance, object 1 has impulse, strike, graph, strike, pick, bow, bow wide, noise, and blow. Number 2 has a lot of those plus some additional ones. And then number 3 has the additional ones that were added in 2 but not in number 1. I hope that all makes sense. So when you build a model here and you're doing different things with it, impulse is a pretty traditional sound activation method. But I just liked how, for instance, we could drop something on the string. Or we could bow it. Or like a flute. And you can see down here the kind of a graphical representation of that. But we can move this just like we would pick on a guitar string at different places. This would be where the pick would be, and then this would be where the actual pickup is. So you can get wildly different sounds just by moving these 2 objects. And then up here, along the circle with the strength, we have a timbre option here, a variation, and then a velocity sensitive amount. So I'm playing on the musical keyboard, so velocity sensitive doesn't do much since I don't have velocity control. But we can definitely change overall variation. And it's going to change how this object interacts with the string model and the pickup. So this is one component, all of these things. You can do some pretty creative things. For instance, I'm going to do some bouncing, and we'll do it on the key off. Let's turn it up. There we go. So I turned off object 1. Now we're just letting the object bounce on the string, and it's in the key off position, which means I push the key, and then when I let go, it does that sound. We can pair that with object 1. Let's turn that one down a little bit. And so you can really build a complex sound source or triggering area. Then we get into the material. And this is where we really change the overall sound. We have steel in one corner, glass in another, wood in another, nylon in another. And not just the material, but inside here we have media loss. Let's turn off object 2 for a second. And let's do strike. hear how it's more resonant here, and then we add media loss. Think of this as being a super dense material that after you hit it, it doesn't really vibrate at all because it's so dense. And then we put it down here, and this is very much a resonant object. Then we have tension mod. And it's not doing too much here, but this is more of like a, for instance, the way you hit like a tom on a drum kit and the pitch will bend a little bit. And then we have the key scale, so we can change these again out here on the side, and this will change if you're playing from low to high on a keyboard. And then we have release, which talks about what happens in that release phase after you're done triggering. So really complex in terms of the material. And we can do a combination of all of these. Okay, then we have the delay, which we have it turned on. Nice stereo delay you can do a lot with. Body EQ. Okay, and then we have a filter here. All of this, I guess we have the envelope as well. All of this is designed to give you the instrument sound. And then down below is the mod section. We have an LFO, and we also have this really complex set of envelopes. And then we have our morph. Now the morph option doesn't give you every parameter, but what you can do is you set on each of these nodes, you go to them and you can change the parameters. And then you can actually morph between them. Not just morph between them, but we can also automate this so that it follows a set pattern. So let me find one here which has an envelope all written out. You'll see that there will be lines in that morph box, so that's what we're looking for a moment. Probably should have, there we go, there's a couple. Looked one of these up in advance. You can see the red dot follow it. And a lot of that happens down here, where you can see the note plus movement is the record trigger. It's set to envelope mode, and then each of these points here represent points out in this area, and I can actually move those points around. But you can create really interesting soundscapes. So without going into too much detail with that, this is just a really intense, powerful way to control your overall sound. Now, what do I use this for the most? This is a type of sound which I really do like with it. Just kind of, there's a role here that I like with this type of sound that's either this or, a DX7 type FM synth. It's really hard to get in a lot of other ways, so I really like that part of it. The other thing I end up using quite a bit would be guitars. There's a Telecaster here. So this, in conjunction with our chord trigger, using, let's see, multi-guitar voice and, let's see, open guitars. So that's one piece, getting the voicings right to make it sound like a guitar. But then we come in here to our amps and pedals. And we can get some sounds. It's a lot easier when you have a keyboard to play instead of the computer keyboard. Okay, that sounds horrible, but okay. So that's one option. The other thing, of course, instead of the amps would be the pedal board option. Which we could do some interesting things with this. And so that's pretty cool. The other thing we can do with this would be what I did in a project that I had used from a different video. Let's keep this one open for now. With this guitar part, let's see, let's turn off the cycle. Classic clean. So this was the guitar. This is a sampled guitar, but one option we could have done was to use sculpture and one of those guitar sounds. So just some interesting guitar type sounds for that. Now, the reason why I'm showing this is because this guitar part was actually performed on the iPad in GarageBand iOS, where you actually have the strings and you play it on the screen. And so when you do like a chord strum, it actually is closer to an actual guitar, even though it's not the same. Nothing's the same as a real guitar. Not really. Cool. Okay, so just some interesting things there with that. Let's go back into the other project for a minute. So lots of options with it. I really, really like sculpture. And it's just something about it, though, that's starting to drive me crazy. And that is this old interface that we're still using here. There are better ways to make this usable. And it's actually a problem because as this is now, check this out. If we come down here into our objects, one knob in the middle, three knobs all around it, teeny little dots, a selector here, on and off. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 things in like an inch, a square inch area. And while it's very doable, it's sometimes hard to even see what we're looking at. It was cool interface when it first came out. I mean, it's designed to look a certain way, but I really feel like there could be a much simpler way to really get us to the same place here. Okay, so that's enough about sculpture. We've hit about the 25-minute mark, and we are going to have to work on growing an audience for live streams. I see that we've had a couple people on. Nothing longer than a few minutes, though. So if you're watching right this second, thanks for joining. And we're about to pull the plug on this. I just wanted to hit about 30 minutes. See if we can get some other people, but I need to in the next couple weeks just find like a couple hours. I want to sit down and actually just like do a whole song whilst live streaming, but we'll get there. Super cool technology. So I'm looking over at the my iPad app, which is on what's called the Live Control Room in Google and YouTube. And it gives me all my stats. It tells me how the streaming feed is. It tells me how many people have been watching. The average view duration, which is going up, which means somebody is watching right this second. Sweet. And then I have the live chat page too. Okay, you didn't come to watch me talk about live streaming. But I am going to pull the plug on this. Unless one of you watching has a question. I will give you about 20 seconds to see if you do. We'll see if the live chat actually comes through. And if not, we're going to end this thing for the night. Logic's pretty awesome. Let's see, octave down. Yeah, I prefer real guitars personally. Sculpture does do some pretty awesome sounds. We should end with a little song. 4 bars, 8 bars. Sometimes I don't like how it does that. Let's play through one time. Okay, here's our song. Okay, we hit 34 minutes. I wrote a song using all sculptures plus the Bluebird default drummer. Who's our drummer today? Darcy. Thanks, Darcy, for drumming for us and for Sculpture for being pretty awesome. And we're going to do more of these live streams. If you're watching to this point and you want to leave a comment on when they're best for you, please let me know when you want to do a live stream, and we'll make it happen, because what else would I be doing? Seriously. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.